All right, so there was this busy village situated along a river. One day, shockingly, a villager noticed a baby floating down the river. So naturally, he jumps in, saves the baby. Whew, oh my Lord, here come lots of babies down the river. So he calls all the other villagers, let's jump in. We've got to save all these babies. Well, the crazy thing is, the babies kept coming day after day. So what they did, they set up a nonprofit, Save the Babies. They started hosting all of these youth groups and mission teams. Years later, they became a 4-star rated charity on Charity Navigator. They all felt so very good about the incredible humanitarian work they were doing. Until one day, a little girl comes to volunteer and very innocently asks, "Where are the babies coming from?" People of God, we must go upstream. The call to justice is the call to discover the source of the world's greatest problems, to go upstream, to take an axe and hack away at the roots of the things that are actually causing all of the injustice today. For if our faith is about anything, and despite what we might hear from oftentimes in our churches growing up, if there is a common thread that weaves its way through all of Scripture, it is this: God is always, always, always for the poor, and God is about making all things right. And this is called justice. This is what our God is about. However, as our Scriptures tell us, and as all of us have experienced day to day, look through your news feed for 5 seconds, there are people, powers, and principalities that want to keep us just busy and occupied bailing babies out of the water. This is death by distraction, and it is on purpose. And on these days, it would appear that injustice is winning. Yet our call, no matter how hard it is, as people of faith, is to do everything we can to work for justice, to battle that very difficult stream upstream in order to get to the roots of the real world's problems. Now, what does that mean exactly, to go upstream in order to fight injustice? Well, I can tell you what it is not, first of all. It does not mean that people like you and me say, an elected official, as if, will do that work for me, or one of these superhuman saints will take care of that for me, so I can just kind of sit back. It does not mean putting a temporary Band-Aid on some of the world's most complex problems, or trying to brush them away with a slogan of some sort and say, we'll solve it in that way. And it certainly does not mean all we do is spend our time bailing babies out of the water and never asking the big question about where the heck are the babies coming from. It is not about doing things for people and just giving gifts and handing a buck out here or there. It is not deciding for people how they should be fixed. What justice is truly about, it is leads us to think about the world differently. It is doing, and this is the key word for all mission and ministry, is with. This is what we've never done for a long time. Ministry and justice is about with people, not doing things for them or giving things to them. So it challenges us to ask questions, really hard questions. And y'all, this is a Pandora's box rabbit hole. When you go home, look at the back of your shirt collar. Where's your shirt from? I think this one is from Bangladesh. Who made this shirt? What did they get paid to make this shirt? Where did the fabric come from? And that's just one of a million questions I can start asking. Why are there so few healthy food options in grocery stores in poor neighborhoods? And when you do go to the grocery store, who grew that fruit? Most all our bananas come from Guatemala. Well, what does that field look like? And were those people treated fairly? I have no idea. I give a lot of money into pension and mutual fund. Have you ever looked at to where, what companies is that funding? What if it is funding companies that are doing awful in the world? Do I know? I confess, I have no idea. It just shows up on a statement of some sort, science and technology fund. Great, as long as it's growing, I don't care. That is not a statement of justice. I read all these studies. Why does someone named John get the job twice as often as someone named Juan when they have the exact same qualifications? Why are black men incarcerated at 3 to 4 times the rate as white men who commit the exact same crime? Why are 75% of NFL players black, and of the 32 teams, there's not a single black owner? All of these questions just start to be like an avalanche on us, and I know they can be overwhelming, but they are ones that we have to ask. Once again, it is like a rabbit hole, and I know it can be overwhelming, and if I ask every single question about every single thing, I could get a little just bogged down. However, it is important to be aware of questions like this. I guess the problem, I'd say, with justice is there's no warm, fuzzy feelings immediately. It is battling the current to go upstream. And so you can see why most of us prefer charity. And we do talk a lot of difference about the difference between charity and justice. Charity makes us feel good about ourselves, and part of the reason why I do it, to be perfectly honest, is because it relieves my guilt. I can volunteer about 1 hour a month and feel pretty darn good about myself. Everyone loves charity, but brace yourself. Get ready for a cold bath. Research has shown that our charity may actually be doing more harm than good. More harm than good. And so this was a very hard study for me to read. As a couple of y'all know, I have taken 1,000,000 teams on youth group trips. I've taken a lot of international travel. All of these youth groups, essentially, let's just name it, were doing charitable work. And it makes me wonder, if this study is correct, what harm have I done in the name of well-intentioned charity? So there are 2 books I'd recommend to you. Tough reads, When Helping Hurts, and the other one is called Toxic Charity. And basically, both of them are arguing North Americans, although well-intentioned, have done a great amount of harm around the globe because we have primarily focused on what a community does not have. Instead of focusing on what gifts do they have, what resources do they have. The big word you'll hear here is called asset-based community development, ABCD. And it says, you know what, the old model was Mr. White American comes in and says, you don't have this, I'm going to give you all of that. Whereas the new model is, I come in, if invited, and they say, this is all that we have, and then we come alongside and say, you're the leaders here, we will support you in your work, we will amplify your voices, we are just here as servants at your invitation in order to empower you so that we can never have to be back here again. Because, I mean, y'all, God, the studies are so heartbreaking about Haiti. After earthquakes and hurricanes, North Americans have essentially ruined Haiti. We have all swooped in after one of these tragedies, and God knows we had good intentions, but, I mean, all of us that coming in took away all the local jobs from people who could have done that work. We come in with all this money, and then 1 year later, poof, we're all gone. And then the studies have just shown it has left people totally disempowered and with a feeling of inferiority. And again, this was all done in well-intentioned giving. However, we cannot shy away from this truth. We must ask ourselves this question, and just think about this with your own way you give money and charity and all that. Is it possible that some of those charitable acts are actually doing more harm than good, even though they make us feel good? All right, I'll just share one small example, and I don't want us to fixate on this, but it's just one small example about how messy charity can be. Okay, so when I've got clothes that I don't wear anymore, I bring them where? Usually to Goodwill, occasionally to one of those metal containers in a parking lot. Okay, this all seems like a good and fine thing. People who are on a tighter budget can receive clothes hopefully, that are in decent shape at a very low cost. The problem with all of this is, besides that 5 to 10% of our donations go into the landfill because they're not resellable, is a ton of them actually are shipped overseas. Now, once again, we can say, this is a good thing. We have provided very inexpensive clothes to someone who is on a tight budget. Yes, but when we ship all these abandoned shirts and things, they end up in like Guatemala. They have got, if you go with us on the trip, these tiendas called pacas, and they are in mass, just American t-shirts, Old Navy, American Eagle, whatever, all of these type of shirts. And because we flood them with all these shirts, it takes jobs away from local fabric workers. They lose their jobs. And as a result, the economy suffers. Not to mention Guatemala, which is known for its gorgeous indigenous traje dress, once it has now been flooded with our cast-off American clothing. I kid you not, one time in Guatemala, I saw a very older Mayan man wearing a t-shirt that said, unbeknownst to him, "Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me?" We just crushed culture in one fell swoop. So, again, these are hard truths to hear. And we've got this group of folks in Scripture who are these truth tellers, such as the prophet Amos. Now, I'll tell you this. It is safe to say everyone hates the prophets. All prophets are jerks, but this is key. Not all jerks are prophets. Just because someone has a strong opinion and is angry, and certain people are all coming to our mind right now, does not make them a prophet. You have to be speaking truths about God and God's love for the poor and oppressed in order to be a prophet. So Amos is one of these folks, and a lot of this is going to feel a little eerily familiar, is living in a time when a precious few are experiencing unprecedented prosperity, while a lot of the folks are living in poverty. Things had gotten really bad. And God says through Amos, justice is a lost cause. Evil is epidemic. Decent people throw up their hands. Protests are useless. A waste of breath. God, thinking about this term, I can't breathe. Waste of breath. This is all very powerful language. It is a world of inequality and injustice where there's lots of protests, and yet the protests don't always yield results. And so the question is justice in our world a lost cause, a waste of breath? So this is 2,500 years ago, and here's the take home. God is not a happy camper. God is ticked. And it is not because the people are bowing down to idols or something. It is because they are running roughshod over the poor. They are really mistreating the poor. They are taking bribes. There's so much corruption and greed. And this is why God is upset. Not because they're not doing religion right. So God responds, man, this is like the biggest smackdown in all of the Bible. I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religion projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. This is all hitting too close to home. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes, your public relations, image making, and ego-driven noisy music. I can assure you, yours is not ego-driven or noisy. But we all think of things we've seen that are ego-driven and noisy. So I want none of this. What do I actually want is justice and fairness, oceans of justice, rivers of fairness. Turn away from your evil ways, or you're never going to live in those luxury houses you're building or drinking from these vineyards that you have planted. So many of these words could be for us today. We are focused more on, as religious people, the legal technicalities of the law and arguing over one verse in Scripture, when the vast majority of verses about injustice in Scripture are about the ways in which we mistreat the poor. This is the truth through all of Scripture. And yet, some of Christians in elected leadership It is like reality show worthy drama. Blustery billionaires and all this mudslinging. And again, all this death by distraction, I believe, is very intentional. Lest you and I start pointing the finger at others, however, we are part of the problem as well. And we can just confess that. And I don't like to go upstream because I'm busy, and that's really inconvenient. And I'd like to spend my money on other things. Yet, Amos continues to speak to us and establish perhaps one of the most important links in all of Scripture: justice toward neighbor and right relationship with God. In other words, you cannot be right with God unless you fight for the rights of God's people. Martin Luther King Jr. was so inspired by the prophet Amos, he quoted him in his "I Have a Dream" speech. "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." Jesus was a prophet in the tradition of Amos. Despite what we hear, when someone will say, like, that's a social justice church. No, it's just a church that is reflecting the teachings of Jesus about politics, society. All of these things matter, very much in the same stream as the Black Lives Matter movement Jesus 2,000 years ago. Samaritan lives matter, even though they're a different race than you and a different religion than you. Women's lives matter. Lepers' lives matter. Prostitutes' lives matter. Because the way of Jesus only goes in one direction, and that is upstream. And so I believe our call is clear: to follow in the tradition of the prophet Amos and be aware of how are we doing charity, which at times is certainly needed, and what does it look instead to work for justice. And this is going to take work. So we cannot fall into the trap of spiritual laziness or thinking someone else is going to do it. The call is to us. The pursuit of justice is too important. And so let me close with these words from this band called the Cobalt Season. Oh man, these things like convict me like crazy. And I pray they find a place in your heart and mind today. In all that we need to see and all that we need to hear, we tie their hands behind their backs and look away. We tear the shirts right off their backs and then donate cash for all they lack. Fancy ourselves philanthropists, save justice for another day. And we wonder how we got so far making money off each other's scars. Still, it's never my fault. What other options did I have? We choose to tell each other's lies that the kingdom can never be realized. The master never could have meant the words he said. Friends, the master did mean the words he said. Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. We are called to be justice people. We are called to join God in setting all things right. People of God, we are called to go upstream. Amen.